When I was a kid, we had a dog that could pee bubbles. You didn't have to feed it anything special, not soapy water or anything like that. What would happen is that he just got into a certain kind of mood. You'd see him wandering around for a bit, and he'd walk round in a circle, and then he would stand very still for a moment, and the bubbles would come out. You could never tell when he would decide to do it, and you couldn't make him do it. It was just when he felt like it. I told my friends that he could do it, but they didn't believe me. Then they would come over and I'd say, "Jack, pee bubbles." But he never would. And even if one of them came over for a sleepover, he wouldn't do it. So none of them believed me when I said that he did. Now, it would be great if you subscribed. That is, you become a subscriber. Look out for the subscribe button. What happens, you see, is that I make new vids every few months, and then I post them up one a week for a while. So if you subscribe, you get to see the new ones just as they come hot off the press. Clever cakes and other stories. The Raja's ears. Once, long ago in India, when there were kings called Rajas and people lived in fear of them, there was a Raja who had very big ears. They were so big, he wore his hat to hide them. All day and every day he wore his hat so that no one would know about his ears. Of course, one or two people did know about them, but they didn't say a word to anyone else about it. They could imagine what terrible things would happen to them if the Raja ever found out that they had been gossiping about him. The Raja was going to get married, and so he wanted to have his hair cut. He ordered a barber to come to the palace, and when he arrived, he sent all his servants and courtiers outside. Then he said to the barber, "Now listen here, young man. In a moment, I'm going to take my hat off. Then you will see that I have ears that are not small. No one in the whole country knows about my ears. If ever I hear that you've been talking about my ears, gossiping or telling tales, then I'll cut your head off. Do you understand?" "Yes, your majesty," said the barber. The Raja took his hat off and the barber cut his hair. All the time he was cutting away with the scissors, he was trying not to look at the Raja's ears. But there they were, right in front of him, all the time, just where he was looking. So he said over and over again to himself, "I must not tell anyone about the Raja's ears. I must not tell anyone about the Raja's ears." When he had finished, the Raja put his hat on and sent the barber off saying, "Remember what I said, young man?" "Yes, your majesty." Not a word to anyone. And that's the way it was for the rest of the day. He didn't breathe a word about it to anyone at all. But all the time, the barber was thinking about it. At work the next day, when he was cutting other people's hair and chatting with a customer, he was thinking about it then. The customer says, "I don't suppose much happens to you here, does it? Day in, day out, cutting people's hair." Straight away, the thought of the Raja's big ears leapt into his mind. "Well, sir," he said, "the other day I was cutting the Raja's hair, and you won't believe it, but you know he's got enormous..." And he stopped himself. "What am I saying?" He thought, "I'll get my head cut off." "What's he got?" said the customer. "Enormous jewels on his rings," said the barber. "Whew. That was a close one," he said to himself. At home that night, his wife was changing her earrings, and he found himself saying, "Hey, those earrings look very nice on you, my dear." "Thank you," says his wife. "You don't think they're too small?" "Oh, they don't look too small on you, dear, but I tell you who they would look funny on. That's the Raja, because he's got really big ears." "What am I saying?" he said to himself. "I'll get my head cut off." "What's he got?" said his wife. "Oh, he's got really big earrings. Small ones would look funny on him." Whew. That was another close one, he thought. Outside in the yard his children were playing, and he went out to call them in for bedtime. Two of them were pulling faces at each other, sticking their tongues out, pulling their ears. Hey, don't do that, says the barber. You look like the Raja. Why do we look like the Raja, says one. Well, because he's got big... What am I saying? The barber thought. I'll get my head cut off. He's got big children, said the barber, and they look like the Raja. You look like his children, so you look like the Raja. Whew. That was another close one. And so it went on all the next day. He was dying to tell someone. In the end, he had a plan. The next morning, instead of going straight to work, he went off to the woods. I know what I'll do, he thought. I'll tell a tree. I'll tell a tree that the Raja's got big ears, and that'll be that. It won't bother me anymore. I'll have told someone who can't tell anyone else. The Raja will never find out, and I'll feel a lot better. So the barber crept up to a great big tree in the woods. He looked behind him, looked to either side. He looked behind the tree and all round it. Then he stood up in front of it and said, "The Raja's got big ears." Oh, that felt so much better. It felt like a great load had been taken off his back, and off he went to work, happier than he had been for days. Later that day, a woodcutter came to the woods and chopped down the very same tree that the barber had talked to. The woodcutter sold the wood from the tree to a musical instrument maker, and the instrument maker made some drums called a tabla and a stringed instrument called a sitar. The instrument maker sold the tabla and the sitar to a band that was one of the best in the country. In fact, so good was this band that they were asked to play at the Raja's wedding. Yeah, everyone was there, all the Raja's relations, all his servants, servants, even the Raja's barber. What a day it was. There was a wonderful ceremony, followed by a great feast. And then came the dance. The musicians made ready. There was a hush. And then the music began. But of all surprising and awful things to happen, the sound coming out of the musical instruments wasn't a wedding dance, but a song. And the words of the song were, "The Raja's got big ears. Oh yes, the Raja's got big ears. Do you know what? I know what. The Raja's got big ears." "Stop! Stop! Stop!" shouted the Raja. "I heard that!" he roared. "I heard every word of that." The hundreds of wedding guests stood in silence. The thought of his barber sprang into the Raja's mind. Only the barber knew about his ears. Only the barber could have told anyone. "Barber!" bellowed the Raja. "Barber, where are you?" The barber stepped forward. "Yes, Your Majesty, I heard that song. You heard that song. You have disobeyed me. I told you not to tell a single person. And now everyone knows. But Your Majesty, I didn't tell a single person." "Oh, yes, you did. And tonight you lose your head." "But Your Majesty, I didn't tell a single person. I told a tree. That's not a person, is it?" The Raja stopped. A smile crept onto his face. He muttered to himself, I didn't tell a person. I told a tree. I didn't tell a person. I told a tree. The man's right. He didn't tell a single person. Oh, what am I making a fuss about? It's only ears. So what if I have got big ears? Some people have got big feet. Some people have got little noses. We're all different, and we always will be. And at that he pulled off his hat and said, "Friends and relations, the Raja's got big ears. Let the band play." The band played and everyone sang, "The Raja's got big ears. Oh yes, the Raja's got big ears. Do you know what? I know what. The Raja's got big ears."
Now, it would be great if you subscribed. That is, you become a subscriber. Look out for the subscribe button. What happens, you see, is that I make new vids every few months, and then I post them up one a week for a while. So if you subscribe, you get to see the new ones just as they come hot off the press. Eeeew.